If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Okay, top of the morning, at least here in the northwestern hemisphere. It's 9 a.m. here. I don't know what time it is in here. I have a brother that calls in from Australia. I think it's 11 p.m. out there. I talked to him earlier this week, and he's in. Anyway, hey, good morning. I'll say to you, maybe good evening to him, but good morning. And welcome to the Counter Racist Code Show, also known as the CRCS, with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Sometimes I might call him Fuller. Sometimes he calls himself Fuller. But anyway, guess what? You are here today, and it is no accident. We are so delighted to have you here. Have mercy. Thank you. I am Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of this show. So happy that Mr. Fuller chose me to be the co-host. Could I get better? Absolutely. Working on that. Listen, we would love for you to contact the show. So here's how you can do that. Call this number, 516-453-9921. And when you do that number, please, when the call screener comes on, give the person your name, as John did in Houston. Thank you, John. Darnell, yeah, you're doing good. Yeah, I asked John to call in because he was the last caller last week, and he did it. He called in first, and they put him right up there. So, John, yeah, good job, good job. But anyway, you can call in. Make sure you get a call screener, your name, and that way that's good. And if you are a first-time caller, first time listening to this show, which goes all over the world, I have the countries that this program goes to, and I was surprised at some of them. But, yeah, and the listenership, yeah, how many people, the graphics on the ages and all that. Yeah, okay, yeah, Neely Fuller, the message is getting out, and that's good. Even amongst young people, that statistic is rising, so we thank God for that. Listen, if you are a first-time caller, make sure that you tell the call screener that you're a first-time caller, and don't be lying because he be knowing, or they be knowing, they can see. And if you are, then we have something set up for you that you can and will get your call through. So in other words, you will be heard. Okay, good. Now, secondly, you can go to my site if you have a question. My Gmail is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Put it in there, and when you write it, now this is what I will do. I will tell you that I say, got it. That lets you know that I have it and it is in rotation. Now, it may not be read that day, but it will be read at some time when we have some time. Then I'll read it. Like I have 2 juicy ones today that we got to get to, but we'll get on to those. Okay. And lastly, you can go to the chat room. Listen, go to blogtalkradio.com. Okay. When you do that, there's a slot there where you want to get the list of programs. You want to get the Produce Justice Show. Click on that bad boy, and when you do, there's a little box where the chat room opens up, and you can get in to the chat room. Yes, you can. And I'll tell you, we have a person in the chat called Constructive Action Items, gives you a list of the program that we did last week, July the 26th, 2022. All that stuff. Sometimes there are rules on there because we are codified people, so we always want to make sure that we are following the code. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Constructive Action. Yeah, she's in there, too. Got her on there. Okay. Oh, yeah, one more thing. Listen, for those of you, and you're going to get in trouble with me if you did this, if you missed Mr. Fuller's interview on the Carl Nelson Show, this past Thursday, Mr. Fuller was on. We have it on our website at producejustice.com. You can get that interview. If you didn't do it, you better do that, or else you got to see me. And you may not want to see me. Sometimes I don't want to see me. But go to that, and you'll be glad that you did. Okay? I think that is all the particulars right there. Oh, yeah, one more thing. The books. Mr. Fuller, at some points in today's program, will be talking about his books. You can get the books by going to producejustice.com, and we'll find out the latest information about the books. If they're all in or whatever, we'll find all that out. But that's how you get it. producejustice.com. That is the website. Okay, enough of me. Let's get Mr. Fuller. Okay, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Enjoyed you so much last Thursday on the Carl Nelson Show. I thought you did a very, very good job. And speaking about that, what are some of your thoughts and expressions that you would like to start off this morning's program with?
Well, the first thing I'd like to correct, or rather embellish, or really answer a question that was asked me, and I did not respond to that question in the best codified manner. The question was, what proof do I have that the system of white supremacy exists? I don't know the exact words that I used in response, but probably the best answer, and the answer that when I thought about it after I went off the air, the answer is, I have no proof, simply because I am a black person subject to the system of white supremacy, and no black person on the planet can prove the existence of the system of white supremacy. Not one. Even though that's the system of government that governs most of the people on the entire planet. The system of white supremacy in capital letters. That's the world government, according to evidence, according to what I call the compensatory code, which means a made-up code that we hopefully, the people on the planet, are in the process of designing to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. But in answer to the question, no black person in the known universe can prove, while he or she is subject to the system of white supremacy, no black person can prove that the system of white supremacy exists. That includes Neely Fuller, Jr. There's no way that I can prove it. The white supremacists can simply say, not only does the system of white supremacy not exist, there's no such thing as that, Neely Fuller doesn't even exist. And I think I said that last week. If they choose to simply say what everybody's standing there looking at me and hearing my voice and all that, the white supremacists can say, I don't have to pay any attention to none of you black people. I'm saying he doesn't exist, nor does his theory or what he says in his statements does a system of white supremacy exist. Now, who is going to overrule me and make it stick? And if that white person is talking to a black person, when that white person says that, there's nobody on this planet that can overrule it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what white supremacy means. Only what they say goes. If they say white supremacy exists, then it exists. If they say there's no such thing as that, Not only that, the person who is saying it doesn't exist, Neely Fuller Jr. He doesn't exist. And a black person can be standing there and reach out and touch me and say, well, who is this? They'll say, he is whomever I call him. Now, if I say that Neely Fuller doesn't exist, and that's some individual standing there that I once said does exist, then he'll only exist when I say he exists. Because you are black, and you can't prove anything to me, because you're all subject to me, every last one of you black people. That's what white supremacy means. They can only prove what is true and what is not. Prove it to whom? To people who are subject to them. And that's every black people, a person on the planet. Now, I hope I cleared that up.
Okay.
Nobody can prove the existence of white supremacy in the system of white supremacy except the white supremacists.
Yeah. Okay. In the system of white supremacy. Okay, make sure that's there. All righty. Thoughts and expressions of Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. starting out today's program, August the 2nd, 2022. All right. Let's go to the phone lines. Get ready, John. Get ready. John in Houston, where you don't have a problem. Here we go, John. Greetings coming up here. Wait a minute. Go ahead, Buffer. John, you're on. Go ahead, do your thing.
Grand Rising, gentlemen, and Mr. Bobby, I got to respond to that. The Houston, we have a problem.
Okay.
And I also have to throw a quick quip to what he said about his thoughts this morning. That is Neo and Morpheus in the Matrix, for what our elder just said this morning. Okay. My VGQ, ironically, did not know when I was trying to ask you at the end of the show last week that the Senate, the United States Senate, had a hearing before the representatives of the 5 civilized tribes. Now, I don't know if Mr. Fuller wants to go in depth about responding to that, but the point I was raising about him being a Muskogee, born and raised, what his parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents may have shared with him on that, and the truth of it as to opposed to what is a Native American and what we're led to believe is an African American. So my point this morning is, does he consider himself a free man of birth of the original people of this land, or a freed man that was enslaved, as he says to us today, being a prisoner of war? And I'd like to listen to the response. Thank you for the time, Mr. Bobby. Have a wonderful morning.
All righty, John in Houston. All right, Mr. Fuller, Muskogee, do your thing.
Well, it's on the back of the book about the author. That's a textbook for the victims of white supremacy. And it says, I, Neely Fuller Jr., the writer, author of this book, have been, like millions of others, a long-time victim of and servant to racism, white supremacy, in all areas of activity. And that's my identity. I'm a victim of white supremacy based on my skin color and my skin color classification, black and or non-white. Now people can throw in other pseudonyms, I think that's what you call them, like part Indian maybe, or part this or part that. Have a name that's English, and they say that's not an African name, Neely Fuller Jr. Many people have said that, and doesn't have his origins in what we call Africa, or among quote-unquote indigenous people. That's white people's names, and apparently, from what I've heard and seen, that's true. But the identity like I have, the accurate identity, the way that I respond in a world court about race, I would have to say that I am a victim of the system of white supremacy. And since my inception, even before I was born, I was that, because my progenitors, what we call my father and my mother, were also victims before me. So that's my most distinguished title.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay.
And all the rest doesn't matter. If you're a prisoner of war, I have a lot of things I can attach to that, which I have done. I call myself a prisoner of war, which is what I am. I'll testify to that. Now, I might get overruled, but that's what I am right now. I've always been that, a prisoner of war.
Yes, sir.
Because somebody made war against me based on this thing called color.
Okay.
So that's my answer. Victim of white supremacy. Beyond that, that's enough said.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Since you just said that you are, and correct me, please, if I'm wrong or incorrect, that you are a victim of white supremacy and a system that you cannot prove that exists. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's in a nutshell as far as, you might say, kicking in the door to a conversation about racism. I'm a victim of racism, and I have no way of proving it in the system of racism, which is the only system I've ever experienced. I've never experienced an American government or an African government or an Asian government. Never had not 1 second of an experience in any of that. I have always been one thing, victim of white supremacy, and that's all. All the other titles do not matter and have not mattered.
Then the question would come up, how can you be a victim of something that you cannot prove that exists?
Because I'm a victim of it. Who am I going to prove it to? When the white supremacist can say, he's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. If you want to know him, all about him, ask me. I'm a white person. That's what the white supremacists will say. He doesn't know anything about himself, because I didn't teach him anything about himself of what I taught him, and he doesn't know whether he can prove that or not. I'll tell him whether he can prove it, and then that will be me telling him that he's been approved of. Until I do that, and he's calling himself a victim of white supremacy, all I have to do as a white person is say, he's no victim of nothing. In fact, he's a king, and he doesn't have any problems at all. Why? Because I said so. That's why.
Okay. All right, we're gonna have to let that one stew for a while. You know, sometimes things got to cook or simmer to get that flavor in it. And while it's flavoring, we're gonna go up to the great state of New York. Yeah, you're gonna get Darnell in the action. Okay, action, Darnell. Go ahead. You're on. Hey, Darnell, you're on. Darnell.
Hello, Mr. Bobby. Hello, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
I want to ask Mr. Fuller a question about deception in the system of white supremacy and what makes it so important.
Because that's a very effective way of controlling people. In a nutshell, that's a straight answer, I hope. That is the most effective way of controlling people. If I want to control someone, I deceive that person. I think there's even something, a Bible reference to that.
Yes, there is.
It's called the King Richard, that something that's referenced to as the devil deceived the entire world. I've heard that. Maybe somebody who is listening to me now said that some preachers told them that. I think a number of preachers have told me that. And so lots of things that people can do. People can go fishing. People can fly through the air and whatnot. But if people want to control other people, one thing that people can do, and it seemed to work all the time, is deceive the people that they want to control and do their bidding. So they fool them about things. And the white supremacists have been deceptive against the non-white people of the known universe in all areas of activity, according to the evidence that I have seen. And those activities are economics. They deceive black people in economics, in education. Carter G. Woodson called it the miseducation of the Negro. You missed that education that you should have had. They told you were educated, but you missed it. And Carter G. Woodson was a teacher. And he said, hey, when people taught me, they missed it. Why? Because they were given a whole bunch of misinformation. By whom? By the white supremacists. Then, in entertainment, deception, saying, now this is fun. So things like drugs, cocaine, heroin became a form of entertainment among black people. But black people didn't know, as far as I know, anything about that until the white supremacists say, here, this will make you feel good. You'll be entertained. So you take this and snort it, and you'll want some more. And in the process of doing that, they were being deceptive. They weren't telling people how destructive this is, because they're selling it to them with the little money that they were able to get through a bogus economic system. Then they turn right around and sell them something that's going to destroy them, even after they paid them the little bit of wages that they could get if they paid them anything at all.
At all, yes.
So then the other areas of activity, labor, law, politics, deception, religion, deception on a huge scale.
Yeah.
Say, now this is what this passage means in the Bible. And this is what this passage means in the Quran. And this is what this passage means in the writings of Confucius and Buddha and what other religions you got out there. Well, I'm going to tell you how to interpret them. And the main thing you keep in mind, you black people, when it's me, a white supremacist talking, is that there's one thing you keep in mind when you talk about anything in religion, and that is slaves obey your masters. You get that and you got it all. You don't need to know nothing else.
Yeah. And
then the same thing with sex and war. And they're doing an excellent job right now. Well, that's where the emphasis is, and it's going to slide into religion. That'll be their next step. But right now they're doing a huge job in the area of sex, the area of activity. It's called cripple sex, or racist sexual sabotage. And you know, and there are dozens of other names you can give to it. But it's about what? Deceiving black people that, hey, you people need to improve your sexuality, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. Because, you know, you've been sticking to some old-fashioned variety. I got a big variety for you to choose from. I mean, I got varieties that you ain't never heard of before. And so you're going to be well rainbowized when I finish with you.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Darnell from New York. All righty. Tell you what we're going to do here, because we're going to go a little straight here. We're going to do a station break. Listen to this. Here's the number. 516-453-9921 is the number that you call to get in contact with the show. because you are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Call that number. Make sure that you give the call screener your name. And if you want to ask a question, just push that little button number 1, and then you will get in line, and you can ask your question. Yeah, or give you a brief BGQ if you would like, okay? Make it brief so that we can get all the callers in, okay? I'd like to thank you to all the people that are working behind the board. As Moon Pie is there, Sharon, and, of course, Robert to make Mr. Fuller and myself sound real good and give us all the latest updates that we need to know. But you can get further updates by going to producejustice.com. And on there, the website, the books, interview that Mr. Fuller has, and even past shows if you have missed them. Tell your friends about that, or tell other people they need to get informed about the show because it is worldwide. People want to hear what Mr. Neely Fuller has to say. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people that want to hear what Mr. Fuller has to say. Okay, here, let me see here. This is the Gmail here. This is from, what's this cat's name here? This is from Dale, DT. He says this, Mr. Fuller, the textbook, the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept explains racial showcasing in terms of it being involuntary selection of non-white people by white supremacists to further their purposes of white supremacy. Okay, Fuller, what about those non-white people that are willingly and voluntarily racially showcased who purposely join in with white supremacists to perpetuate and refine the practice of white supremacy? Should they also be considered victims since they appear to want to expand the practice of white supremacy?
No, they're still victims of white supremacy. When you're a victim of white supremacy, if you want to keep breathing, you do what the white supremacists say do. All you have to do is just think of prisoners of war. Prisoners of war want to keep breathing. Look at old movies and whatnot, and if you've been a prisoner of war yourself, which you are according to the code, if you're classified as non-white. So all prisoners of war, unless they're dead, cooperate with the white supremacists. And I saw it again last night for the umpteenth time. I don't know how many times I've seen it. And that's that movie, Shawshank Redemption. I don't look at the entire movie anymore. I used to do that all the way through. But I look at certain scenes that just reinforce what I say when I come on the air. The movie Shawshank Redemption. It's about a prison, and it's about the characters in the prison. Now, one thing all those characters wanted to do, except for one that committed suicide after he got out of the walls, he had been so deceived and brainwashed and worn out that he couldn't find any, what you call, the pursuit of happiness anymore. He didn't see any reason to go on. And he said he was afraid all the time because he had been beaten down so much. And prisoners of war, anybody who is familiar with things like World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, you hear a lot of stories of atrocities, prison camps, where you're a captured soldier. And black people all over the world are considered by the white supremacists to be soldiers in captivity or slaves, which going back to the time of the ancient people, the Roman Empire, they had slaves that they took them into the Colosseum, and for entertainment they would watch the slaves being torn apart by lions, or have one slave kill another slave in a contest, sword fighting, etc., etc. So that's what that's really all about. So you don't blame the victims of white supremacy. You always, you say that they did the deeds, and we do it. We all do it. If the question is, does Neely Fuller support white supremacy? Absolutely. There's no way to stay alive and not what you call, well, not existing anyway. Can't call it living. You're not living when you're a prisoner of war.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had a living. I've had existence in a system of war. And I was born in captivity. So if you're born in captivity, you serve your captors unless you look around and say, I'm a captive, so I don't want to be a captive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you do like the character Brooks in the movie Shawshank Redemption. You say, well, I'll commit suicide because I don't want to be breathing in this type of system anymore. I've gone as far as I can go. Now, I don't want to do that, what Brooks did in the movie Shawshank Redemption. And the other characters in that movie didn't want to do that. They want to keep breathing. But if you're breathing in the system of white supremacy, you are cooperating with the prison system. Why? Because you are a prisoner in the system. And as long as you're breathing in that system, a person can say, well, you're helping to keep the prison system alive because you've got to have prisoners to keep a prison system alive. And that is true.
Mm-hmm.
But you are trying to do what? You're trying to not be a prisoner and still stay here. That's the key.
Okay. All right. All righty. 516-453-9921 is the number to get in contact with the show. By the way, if you are a first-time caller, let the call screener know, and then they'll tell me, and then we will we have something set up real special for you. All right? You do that. All right. Anyway, let's go right here. Let's go to constructive action items. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. My question this morning, why is it important to ask other people what they want to do and why they want to do it when attempting to constructively solve problems?
Okay.
And I would like to stay on the line.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Thank you.
Because all creatures on the planet want something every minute of every day. Even if it's no more than just want to get up out of one chair and go and sit in another. Now, why would a person want to get out of the chair they're sitting in and go across a room or just next to them? In a doctor's office, you get out of one chair and sit in another. So you can see a person doing that. And you'll say, why did that person change chairs? And most likely, if the person would answer the question, the person would say, this chair is more comfortable. Or the person might say, well, this chair is not as comfortable as the chair that I was in, but this is the only chair that's facing the television. And so I'm sitting here bored. I got an hour to wait. So I'm going to look at television while I'm sitting here. In other words, the person, if they tell the truth, they will answer the reason why they wanted to do one thing, change chairs. And they follow up that by answering another question, why did you change chairs? Because I wanted to see the TV. I couldn't see the TV from where I was, even though this chair is not as comfortable as the one that I left. The person, if they feel like it, will tell you the truth about why they did what they wanted. Here's the key word, wanted to do. Just a simple thing like that. Meanwhile, another person a block away is saying, I want to catch a plane, or I want to catch a taxi, why do you want to catch a plane or to catch a taxi? Say, because I got to get out of town real quick. On account of, I have a sister in Cincinnati, Ohio, who is ailing, and I'm trying to get to her to help her with her ailments as fast as I can. I got an emergency call. That's why I got to get a taxi or a plane or a train or something to get to Cincinnati, Ohio. And I want to do this. Why? Because I'm very close to my sister, and she's looking for me to help her to survive in a crisis. So that person wanted something. Now her sister wanted something, wanted her to show up as soon as possible. All right? If it's that person talking. And on and on and on. It's very simple. Everybody wants something every second of the day. It might be something real simple. A little person saying, Mommy, I want an ice cream cone. That's a want. And say, well, you just had an ice cream cone. Yes, but I want another one. That tasted so good. And it's hot out here. And I had vanilla the last time, and I want chocolate this time. That's a want. Say, well, you want too much ice cream. All right. And then they might go back and forth about it. That's all it is. You find now, why is this important? You find out what a person wants, and you can just about tell what a person will do. Not only a person, but an alligator, a seal, a hawk, a rabbit, an ant. When you see an ant crawling, that ant wants to go wherever it's going, most likely. If it's going away from you, it's probably trying to get away from danger. If it senses that danger is imminent, most creatures, they call it fight or flight. That's a slogan or a slang for it. Most creatures will do that. Okay. They will fight or flee. They make an assessment. That's something they want to do because they want to keep breathing. Okay? Most creatures. I can give all kinds of examples, but one way to find out, the main central thing to focus on, you ask people 4 questions. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? Because if you really want to do something, you've got to start thinking about a plan, even if it's just asking somebody for a roof over your head because you don't have one. So you say, well, how are you going to get that roof over your head? Say, well, I don't have no money. So my plan is to ask somebody who can help me get the roof over my head. So if the sun is going down and it's fixing to snow, and I got no place to get inside away from the snow, that's what I want to do. And then that 4th question, they're all important questions about wants or want, that 4-letter word. But that 4th question is really loaded. What do you expect the constructive result to be if you get what you want? Because there are some people out there who want some heroin right now, or they want some cocaine. Now, what do you expect the constructive result to be of you getting what you want this morning? And that what you want is some cocaine, and you plan to get it by any means necessary. So what you going to? Now you're going to rob somebody? Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing in the next 15 minutes. That guy you see standing down there on the corner, he looks like he got something. So I got a gun, and I'm going to get some money from him so I can get that cocaine. Now, somebody is doing that right this minute. But now, what do you expect the constructive result to be of those two things that you want. Just those two. You want to rob somebody, and then after you rob that somebody, hoping that you get enough money to get what? Some cocaine? Now, neither one of those things, if you stand back and look at them, going to have a constructive result. No constructive result can you squeeze out of either one of those goals. That's just an example. Okay. But you do know what the person will want. And what that person wants, that person is going to try to do it. So getting back to the main lesson here, you find out what a person really wants. A lot of people won't tell you what they really want. They'll cover it all up with all kinds of things. In fact, they will tell lies outright about what they really want. But if you can find out by questions and answers what a person really wants, after you talk for about 3 hours, and they'll find they say, well, to tell you the truth, what I really want out of this is this, 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 and this. See, but sometimes you got to squeeze it out of people. Okay. Because they will not tell you what they really want. They won't tell the truth. They'll pretend that that's what they want when they're really after something else. Lots of people do that in the deceptive system called white supremacy. The white supremacists are experts at it. Pretending that they want something when they don't. We want peace. We want justice. Or they'll talk you to death about that. That's not what they really want. They have total contempt for peace and justice.
All righty. Thank you. Constructive action items. And we'll keep you right there. Before we move on, Justice Warrior had this comment, Mr. Fuller, and he said this is on the previous comment. He said, Mr. Fuller, look, with all due respect, what you said is nonsense. When you say, if we're breathing, we're keeping the system alive. The response, Mr. Fuller?
Oh, that's what the person said?
Yes.
Oh, well, the person doesn't have to listen to me. And if they listen to me and I make that statement, and that's their VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification, the person who made that statement should be listened to and say, is Neely Fuller talking nonsense? So, whatever recommendation you give for when a person is talking nonsense, you talk the censor to them.
Okay.
All right? Because that's what I do. I mean, if I think somebody's making an incorrect statement, I'm not criticizing the person. I just look at the statement and see if the statement is either true or false, or the recommendation is constructive or non-constructive. It's going to be in one of two categories, either constructive, and then if I think that somebody's saying something that's incorrect, and I know that it's incorrect, then the way that I would know that, I may not know what the correct statement is, but at least I know that that statement is incorrect. So I say that. And that comes under, what is VGQ? Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Anything that a person, a non-white person, says that's directly or indirectly connected with race, racism, or counter-racism is valid as far as that person is concerned. And you just state what is on your mind. And you're entitled to do that. You earn that by being a victim.
Okay.
So you never have to listen to what Neely Fuller says, or you can choose to listen to what he says, or like some people have said, many people have said, oh, yeah, I've heard of this guy, Neely Fuller. I mean, I've listened to all that stuff he's talking. He ain't talking about nothing but trash, man. I mean, you know, it sounds like it's something on the surface. I ain't listening to him. I got somebody else to listen to. So that's what you do. So that's the beauty of VGQ. That's something that I invented to keep black people from doing what? Squabbling among themselves.
Right.
When it hasn't proven to be a problem solver. Black people squabbling with each other has not done anything to improve the world.
To improve. Okay. That was from the chat room. Justice Warrior had this to say, and before we move on, one more question from the chat room. From Swaz says this, Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., you've used the term Rainbowism. Can you explain that term, please?
That's what people have told me that it is, that if you are rainbowized, that you believe in various forms of sex other than male with female, which sometimes is called straight. Now, I don't know where straight came from. I just say male and female. I don't even use the term because I don't know what that means, straight. Does that mean that other forms are crooked? I don't know. See, I mean, but people can debate it, and people are debating it, I guess. But I do know what the white supremacists are doing with all of it. Just like when they do with anything when it comes to non-white people. They are fashioning it in such a way that it serves white supremacy. They shape it. Why? Because they shape everything that non-white people do. That's what white supremacy means. And sex is no exception.
All right.
Now, that's either true or false. Neely Fuller's either lying again, as some people say he's doing it, or he's not. He's either telling the truth or he's not. Even if he's not lying, I mean, making a mistake. Okay? Well, he's either making a mistake or he's not. But I'm saying the white supremacists are busy shaping everything all the time.
Okay.
What non-white people on this planet are not only doing, but everything that we are thinking, everything that we think is important, they shape it.
They shape it. Okay.
Everything we look forward to, they shape it. And shape it how? In order to do what? In order to keep their power over us. Us meaning those who recognize it for what it is, and that's the system of white supremacy, the most powerful government that the world has ever seen. And that's the title of it. It's no other title. It's no American government, no African government, and no Asian government, and never has been as long as there has been the government of white supremacy.
Yeah, you said that on the Carl Nelson show.
I'll say that on every show because I say it's true. Now, people can say it's not true. There is another mysterious government. I don't know what government that is because I've already said the American government doesn't exist. The Asian government doesn't exist. The African government doesn't exist and has not existed since the beginning of the system of white supremacy, which is the only government of the people of planet Earth in recorded history.
In recorded history. All right. Well, let's go to someplace that does exist. Let's go down to Flatbush. You know what that's at? If you don't know, that's in Brooklyn. Toussaint! Yeah. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Come on, brother. Got to bring it.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning. What's going on?
Hey, nothing much, man. It's great to hear from you guys. I'm actually, I just have two quick questions, if that's okay. I'm just going to ask the first one real quick.
If they're real quick, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, boss. Mr. Fuller, is there any such thing as white friendships in the system of white supremacy?
Well, I wouldn't know what it is. It depends on what friendship is. And a friend, according to the code, counter-racist code that I have written, is a person that practices justice. So nobody practices justice in the system of white supremacy. That's impossible. Justice cannot exist, not for 1 second, in the system of white supremacy. Why? Because the system of white supremacy is designed to produce non-justice. And so what is justice? That's another word. So according to the code book that I have written, justice is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help all the time in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So justice doesn't exist anywhere on the planet in the year 2022 because somebody is being mistreated all the time. Mm-hmm. And somebody fails to get the help that somebody needs all of the time. So you cannot have justice and mistreatment of any person anywhere in the known universe, and you have non-justice, because that's non-justice, non-balance between people. Everything correct happens. Mm-hmm. Some people have said, well, Fuller, you're talking about something that's impossible. And I say, I don't know that. I can say it looks like it is, but I've seen a lot of things that look like they were impossible, like being on this telephone. I went through that at a very early age. I haven't been here forever, but I've been here long enough to appreciate a thing like a telephone, which I thought was weird. And then when it went a little bit further, and I was looking at a box in a corner, and I'm looking at the image of a person who is 1,000 miles away. And some of the people who at first, I say on the planet, I've been told this, who first saw that box, look behind the box and see if they could see the people hiding behind the box, because they couldn't figure it out. And somebody told them, well, these images are coming through the air. You're not going to find these people hiding over there behind a curtain or something like that. Yeah. And they say, well, how do those people get in that box? They say, well, people who know more than you do know how that happens. See, so be very careful about saying what's impossible. Okay. Because there are so-called holy books that say, yes, you can have peace on earth. All right. So now you just might get into a great big religious squabble with somebody. Yeah, so you don't want to do that. There's a lot of holy books, quote unquote, who say, just like you have in a thing called heaven, you can have that on earth, where everything is perfect. Everything runs smooth. Not a discouraging word. Okay. They thought the same thing about the TV when it first came out. Okay, just very quickly, your second question.
All right. Yes, Mr. Fuller. In regards to counter war, I've been told that I have the white boogeyman syndrome, and that we need to stop focusing on white supremacy so much and start taking action. And it's been my opinion that you need to completely understand the system, as you said, before you make any mistake in trying to produce a counter racist result. So, Mr. Fuller, would you say that you need to fully understand the system of white supremacy before you attempt the counter war method, or is action regardless of what the intended result is action more efficient of a decision to take, if that makes sense to you?
Yeah, well, I'll try to make sense of it. But if it means, here's the way the code explains it. Once I become aware, this is according to the code, of the existence of a thing called the system of white supremacy as a world government, once I conclude that I buy into that idea, and which I have done, I say, and I am a victim of that system, then I start working to replace that system with justice immediately. And I don't stop until I stop breathing. Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And when am I supposed to do it? Every minute of the day. Use all my brain power, every ounce of it, with that in mind. Nothing else. Replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Now, why would I do that? Is because the assumption is I can't do anything else that makes sense without doing that. Everything that I do and everything I see everybody else doing is not going to make sense to me once I've taken that stance. And that's the stance that I have taken. I have invited other people to do the same thing on their own. You don't have to answer to anybody but yourself and your creator, and go for it. And if you don't, if you find something else to do, well, that's your choice.
Okay.
See, the code, nothing about what I'm saying. That's the beauty of it, that VGQ factor. That's one of the most important things that I have written. I'm not supposed to argue with anybody about racism. If a black person says, I ain't thinking about no racism, I'm thinking about making me some money, and I'm not supposed to say anything about it. The person's just stating what they want to do. They're talking about that once again. What I want to do is replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And why do I want to do it? It's because I say it makes everything else don't make sense to me. To be in a world dominated by racism, by the color of my skin.
By the color of your skin. Okay.
Yes, I don't want that more than I don't want anything.
Gotcha.
All right? Because that governs everything and messes up everything I have ever seen. Arguing about what color somebody is has messed up everything I've even heard about. Just made a mess of it. So I say, why not make it my priority to get rid of the thing that causes the most mess on the planet Earth? If you want to use simple language. The thing that causes the most mess among the people of the planet, particularly when I am made the center and the victim of the mess more than anybody.
All right.
So
we're up against a break here, so let's do this. Thank you, Toussaint. Justice Warrior, your statement was made. Mr. Fuller, we got about 2 minutes before we have to change to the second hour. Speak about your book, please.
Yes, the book and the contents that I am speaking of is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of white supremacy. And only the original copy is available right now. That's the 1984 edition. That's the original copy. A revised, expanded edition, 2016, and the Word Guide that came out in 2010, before then, are not available now. But the 1984 edition is available at the website producejustice.com, the textbook for victims of white supremacy. If you're not a victim of white supremacy, or don't think of yourself as being a victim of white supremacy, the book and Neely Fuller's program is not for you. There's no reason to pay attention to Neely Fuller and anything he's got to say about racism if you believe that racism doesn't exist in the form of something called the system of white supremacy. It's a textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and our action. It shows you, puts on your mind, rather, things you can think about or should think about, make suggestions, and things that you do and don't do, and things that you say and don't say as an individual person, and without getting in arguments. I mean, that's a part of the code itself. Neely Fuller is absolutely prohibited from having an argument with anybody, white or non-white, about race, racism, or counter-racism. I'm prohibited from doing that by code.
Okay.
And why? Because it doesn't produce anything except for more arguments. Arguments are designed to win arguments. That's all. They're not designed to solve problems.
Okay. All right.
So you can get it by going to producejustice.com.
Okay. Before we end this first hour, which is going to be in just a few seconds, I just got word, Mr. Fuller, that the Word Guide is now in. the Word Guide is now in, and that the 2016 edition is scheduled to be in on August the 15th. That's the update right now.
August the 15th. Okay,
yeah.
That's quite a few days away, but whenever I'd like for all the volumes to be there, all three, the old volume, the new volume, and the volume that goes with it, the Word Guide, how to use words, how not to use words. You go to producejustice.com. All three of them will be there by August the 15th.
Okay, that's true.
In the meantime, they can get the 1984 edition.
Right now. Okay.
Right now.
That concludes the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Stay tuned to the second hour. In other words, stick and stay. Don't go away, because we got another hour of conversation and Gmails with Mr. Fuller. Del Turner, got you, brother. Thank you. Hey, everybody else, thank you for listening. If you got to go, but if you're going to stay, please do that. First-time callers, come on. Got a place for you right now. You have been listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Stay tuned for the second hour, coming up in 5 seconds. All righty, welcome back to the second hour. That's what I said there. To the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on blogtalkradio.com. We also refer to it as the CRCS. So you're in. Now, say you want a question or you want a comment, and please make it short. Call this number here, right here, 516-453-9921. And then you're in. You can listen if you just want to, but if not, you want to ask a question, you can do so. Just press the number 1 button. Do that. You will get in line because we have some callers on there. Please, ma'am, please, sir, make it short so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question in the appropriate manner, okay? Yeah. Make sure that you do that because we would like to get all of them in, all the questions in, okay? All right. First-time caller, if you are, don't be scared. All you got to do is go ahead, call. Make sure you tell the call screener, give them your name, and then tell them that you are a first-time caller. And Robert and whoever else is back there, Sharon and Moon Pie or whoever is back there, will expedite you up to the front, and then you can ask your question. And by the way, anybody that calls in, make sure you get the call screen of your name. Fuller was on the Carl Nelson show last Thursday. If you did not get it, you're going to have to see Mr. Bobby about that one. But if you didn't get it, it is up on the website at producejustice.com. You might want to give it a listen. I was very glad to listen to it. But you might want to get it a listen and glean some information out there because we are still learning, okay? All righty. Oh, yeah, and don't forget now, you can get the book, the 1984 edition of the code. The code. You can get that in right now, but the revised edition 2016 will be in. I was just told that a few moments ago on August the 15th. All 3 books will be in. What's that third book? The Word Guide. The Word Guide is in now. I was just told that. So you can get that. I think Mr. Fuller, unless I'm speaking out of turn, would like for you to be able to get all 3 books at the same time if that's what you desire. But that's the latest information on that. Okay, I think that's where we are at. Okay, man, New York is representing the Bronx. Guess who's in the Bronx? Yeah, that's him, George. George, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead. Go ahead, George.
Mr. Bobby.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, come on with it, bro.
What you got a bill? I don't want to talk about my story. Wait a second. This is Donald Bill.
Well, you know what? We're having just a little problem in understanding what you're saying, so maybe put the phone a little away from your mouth, and then we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now, bro. Hear you now.
This is Dollar Bill, Mr. Bobby, not George.
Oh, it's it. You know what? It said George from the Bronx. Hey, my apologies. Okay.
Don't worry.
All right, George. Okay, Dollar Bill, go ahead.
There you go. Good morning, gentlemen. I just wanted to say, you know what? I did catch some of that Carl Nelson's show the first hour. I'm going back to watch the second. It was very good, Mr. Fuller. You were really tight. I mean, just really good.
Yeah.
He was. Yes, he was. Most times he is. And I just wanted to say, you brought up a lot of stuff today. I was like amazed at this thing. Well, I can't prove it. With the system of racism, white supremacy. You said, since you said that, you said you can't prove racism, white supremacy. So I was wondering, there's two things I had in mind. I'm going to make it quick, Mr. Bobby. So the first thing I would say in reference to that, can you prove injustice and let the injustice prove that white supremacy exists?
Yes, I always say self-evident when it comes to justice and when it comes to the system of white supremacy. A lot of people say there's no such thing as white supremacy. So if you're a victim of it, you can say that. But who are you saying that to? If you say it to Neely Fuller, what can Neely Fuller do one way or another? He's a prisoner of war. What does he know? So you talk to somebody who says, well, is this system of white supremacy, does it really exist? Well, I say self-evident for black people, meaning after I describe what it is, and a black person says, well, Fuller, I don't believe that. I don't believe nobody's supreme over me other than my God or my creator or whatever they want to call it. Or they just might say nobody at all. I do what I want to do. I do what I please. I go where I want to go. I don't know where you get that nonsense from. I mean, your mind is all messed up. Well, if the person believes that, act on what you believe. That's all. I mean, go for it. Because Neely Fuller, I always say that I think that that's what I am. And if somebody can show me where I'm not, and I've never had anybody convince me that I'm not, well, you can just say, well, Fuller, if you want to keep believing that foolishness, go ahead with it.
Mm-hmm. Because
I ain't paying no attention to it, and I'm going to tell all my friends not to pay no attention to it. You can do that, even though the code says don't tell your associates and your whomever your friend you call your friends and all like that. I got a lot of white friends. I mean, I ain't paying no attention to you. I mean, they laugh at what you're saying and tell me to laugh too. Well, y'all just keep laughing. But see, I'm just talking about my viewpoint. And who am I? Just nobody except a fellow prisoner of war. I want to emphasize that. I can't prove nothing that I'm saying. And on the programs recently, I've been saying, in the system of white supremacy, I can't even prove that I exist. Who am I going to prove it to? I got to be validated by the white supremacists. The white supremacists say, oh, yeah, Neely Fuller, he exists. Why? Because I said he does. That's why. See, that's what supreme means. And people will listen to that. Mm-hmm. When the white supremacists say Neely Fuller does exist, then you can bet just about most black people will say, oh, okay, Neely Fuller exists. Why? Because that white guy standing over there said so.
Okay.
That takes care of that. I mean, that's the end of that story. I mean, that wraps it up. Now, a lot of black people will say, no, Fuller, you're just exaggerating. You mean, well, anytime I have been in what you call a judgment situation, not just in a courtroom, I've been there too, but anytime I've been in a judgment situation where the last word was spoken, it's always somebody white. Always. Okay. Never been nowhere else. Always. Now, I don't know the experiences that other people have had, but either direct, I'm talking about even when the white people are not there, that black person will say, Well, okay, now, I made my decision. Now, if you don't believe that what I'm saying is right on the money, I got somebody to back me up. And when backup person comes there, the last word is always somebody white. I've never seen it any different.
I see. Okay. Dollar Bill, what's that second question?
I just wanted to ask this, Mr. Fuller. So the Bible speaks of a war called Armageddon to correct the system of good versus evil. So why do you feel a system of justice can be obtained without some form of Armageddon? And I would like to stay on the line, Mr. Bobby. Have a great day, gentlemen.
Okay, sir.
The reason I say it, because I don't know. I'm just saying what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be working to end the system of white supremacy, in my mind, and replace it with a system of justice. Why? Because I see that's the best way to spend my time that I have been given, because it's really not my time. And the conclusion I came to, look for the biggest problem on the planet. And the biggest problem on the planet, what I discovered, wasn't anything I had to look for. It found me in the color of my skin. And what I was told was, you see the color of your skin, Fuller? And I say, yeah, what's that skin? So it does have a color, so what about it? Well, that means that you are supposed to be dominated and mistreated by anybody who has white skin. You have color in your skin. So your purpose in existence is to be dominated and mistreated. Not only dominated, but actually mistreated. Mistreated me on account of the color of my skin? Yeah. Well, mistreated by whom? By somebody who doesn't have color in their skin, mostly the colorless white. It's called white. Well, you can call it a white color if you want to, but it still is what it is. But anybody with that kind of skin is supposed to dominate and mistreat you if they choose to do so. And many of them, or most of them, choose to do so. So my logical question is, well, what am I supposed to do? Say, well, you can go along with it and hope for a better day, or you can start fighting it and try to replace it with something better. And if you make that your assignment. So I made it my assignment because I came to the conclusion, well, I might as well have that assignment as any other. And besides, it makes the most sense to me. Because I'm not going to be able to do anything that makes sense with somebody telling me what to do on the basis of my skin color. So I'm going to fight that as best I can with my feeble mind. Because they say the feeble mind also goes with the skin color. I say, well, I'm going to take what little feeble mind I got and do my best not to be a prisoner of war of a system that says I am supposed to be mistreated on the basis of my color. I don't believe that.
Gotcha. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for the holler, the dollar bill in the Bronx. All righty. All righty. Get ready, Joy. And that's your name. We're going out to the land that they say, I've heard it said, whoever they say, 10,000 lakes. I don't know if there's that many lakes out there, but anyway, Minnesota. All righty. Here we go. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and what is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Yeah, my question is, in a system of white supremacy, are non-whites supposed to be participating in organizations led by whites which claim that they are for the betterment of non-whites?
Well, under the United Independent Compensatory System, if I understand the question, each individual non-white person makes the decision about what will best help that person to end the system of white supremacy and replace it with the system of justice. And if that person makes that choice as a prisoner of war of the system under VGQ, you make that choice. And no other non-white person, Neely, Fuller, or nobody else, is supposed to criticize it. I can only criticize the choices that I make. That's code. Why? Because to criticize another non-white person and how they go about responding to the system of white supremacy is supposed to mean that I know how to protect that person. See, that's why when black people, what you call, criticize each other about how they go about responding to the system of white supremacy, they should be saying, according to the code, now this is just a suggestion, oh, you're saying I don't have any problems with racism because racism doesn't exist. Well, if I tell you what I think my problems are, can you solve them? And if that person says that they can't, then they say, well, what else is new?
Okay.
You can ask that question. Now the code says, if you say that, hey, racism isn't a problem, which means you understand what my problems are. And if you understand what my problems are, most likely you're supposed to know what will solve my problems. And walk me through it. Take me by the hand. I'm ready to go at any time. But now, if you can't give me the instruction book for doing that and point out that this is all I have to do and guarantee that it's going to work, then that's my choice to make too.
Yes.
See, in other words, the whole thing is we want to stop all of this nonsense, according to the code, this nonsense of black people squabbling with each other. That's all through the textbook about how to solve problems when black people collectively are considered to be the problem makers of the entire world by the white supremacists. They say they solve our problems according to the code. And I'm saying none of these problems are being solved by anybody, white or non-white.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So who knows who has the answer? Because nobody has. People are being slaughtered every day. Nobody's produced this thing called justice yet. So just talking about it and saying, oh, stop doing that and do this. Well, the person who is saying, including me, saying stop doing that and do this, hasn't really proven so far that they know how to replace anything with justice when it comes to people. Because people are still mistreating each other. That's why.
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So all suggestions might be valid, but nobody has proven that their suggestions yet, including Neely Fuller's, has worked. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to keep on working. That's all.
Mm-hmm. All right. Joy, we thank you. Thank you. And don't be a stranger, Joy. You come on back to the program. We've been glad to have you. 516-453-9921 is the number you call to get in touch with Mr. Fuller if you have a question. You're listening to the CRCS, the Counter Racist Code Show, and to our brother way down in Australia that I had mentioned, Mr. Tremaine, way down there. This is what he said, Mr. Fuller. He said, first off, I'd like to thank you for all that you do as well as the team that continues to stay constructive and keeping the show going weekly. My quick VGQ, the show is the most important show for all non-white people on the planet. My name is Trey, and I'm born and raised in the concept called the United States of America in Chicago. However, I've lived overseas in Sydney, Australia for the last 10 years because of the weird Standard Time zone, I'm not able to call in. However, I listen consistently for the last 3 years every week to the YouTube replay. Yeah, I hear that one of your loyal listeners, Constructive Actions Items, recaps each episode via the chat room, and I would love to access that content. My question is, Mr. Fuller, not sure, Mr. Fuller, if you're familiar with Dr. Boyce Watkins. I recently attended an online course where he hosted a master class with Dr. Claude Anderson to break down chapter by chapter his book, Powernomics. It was extremely constructive, as well as generating revenue for Dr. Claude Anderson. I understand, Mr. Fuller, that you're up in age now. However, your content, Mr. Fuller, is so important that every non-white person on the planet needs to receive it. Will you ever do such a thing, a master class, Mr. Fuller? If so, please, I would be willing to be first in line, and I know the loyal listeners would be ready and willing as well. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and I'll wait for your answer. Regards, Trey, the Master Barber, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Sydney, Australia. He even gave his phone number. Mr. Fuller, respond to that, please.
Well, first of all, according to the evidence, according to the code, codified evidence, I don't master anything. I just make suggestions based on my observations. That's what it says. It says it all on the back of the book about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Right on the back of all 3 volumes of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And there's a problem called the race problem. I say it's the biggest problem in the known universe here in the year 2022 among people and their squabbles. The race problem is the biggest problem, and I'm just making suggestions about how a person can think, speak, and act as a result of that problem in order to eliminate the problem and replace it with something that's not a problem, and that is a thing called justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And I am not a master at doing that. I'm just a fellow prisoner in the prison yard making suggestions about causing that to happen. That meaning what? Replacing the system of white supremacy, an evil system, with a system that's not evil, a system where people have quality relationships in every area of activity, which means no one is practicing non-justice, which means every person interacts with each other person in a way that is constructive all the time, even when they have different points of view.
Yes.
They just have different points of view, and they examine all the different points. And when you replace one view, or when you examine one view, and that's in error, then you find that error and correct it and keep doing that until there are no more errors, like in going into a math class, trying to go to the moon and back. You don't argue. You just find out where the errors are that kept you from going the first time you tried and correct those errors, and you just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying until you finally do what? Get to the moon and back, because that's what you set out to do. And without anybody doing harm to anybody in that process. That's all. But as far as putting labels on it like master class, and I'm not a master of replacing the system of white supremacy with justice. Why? Because the system of white supremacy is still here. It's still the biggest boss on the block, you might say, in slang terms. So no matter how hard I try, it's still here, which means I'm not a master of counter-racism, eliminating racism. Why? Because racism is still here. You become a master when you have actually done the job, not when you're trying, not when you have a theory.
Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Okay. As we continue on with the show. Hang on there, RT. I'm going to get to you there. But we have this one here from Resilient River. Says this. Fuller, what are you doing for the black community besides putting them down? How is telling them that the white supremacists are so much more smarter than helping them? Is this supposed to be tough love?
Tough love. Well, it depends on what you mean by love, since that's the question.
Yes, that's what he said, or they said, whoever this is.
Well, what is love? Love is justice, according to the code. That's the definition in the word guide. Justice is love. Love is justice. And so what's the definition of love and justice, since they're the same definition? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help all of the time without fail. Now, since under that definition, neither love nor justice exists, all Neely Fuller is trying to do, I don't know what effect it's having. It affects different people different ways. One caller just, even on this program, saying, keep doing what I'm doing. So what I think I'm doing, what I'm trying to do, is not trying to hurt black people's feelings. I've been told that too. But I said I'm trying to replace a system of white supremacy with a system of justice. Now, how do you go about doing that? The first thing you do is tell the truth about it, if you can find what the truth is, which is not always easy. So I have told people that there is, first of all, a system of white supremacy. Many people who've said that's not true. So that means my approach to the world's problems is flawed from A to Z, because I have started with the premise that the system of white supremacy is the most powerful system of government in recorded history. The most powerful, the most skilled form of government in recorded history. Now, there are those who say, ain't no such thing. Then everything that Neely Fuller is saying and everything that he has written shouldn't be paid attention to if it turns out to be false, because I'm acting on the premise that everything that I'm saying is true about evaluating how the world is run, that the system of racism is the most influential system on the actions, thought, speech, and actions of all of the people of planet Earth in 2022. Now, that's either true or false. I'm flat out making a statement there. Under oath, you might say. If you want to put it that way. If I was put under oath, as sometimes people in a cliche manner would do. They say, now, you hold up your hand and tell the truth and whatnot the way you see it. That's the way I would, just the way I just stated it. That's the biggest problem on the planet. Now, there are a lot of people who say there's all kind of other problems that are bigger than that. That ain't nothing. you ain't telling the truth. You're either making it up, or you just got a weak mind, or you're this and you're that. And a person can say that if they believe that, because they don't have to believe anything that Neely Fuller says. I'm just trying to figure my way out of what I consider to be the biggest problem on the planet. Other people, and I keep repeating this, who say that there is a bigger problem, well, then they make up a code for solving that problem. And I'll go along with it once I wake up. And I would be the first to admit, first of all, I was working on what I thought was the wrong problem. There was another problem that other people were working on, and they solved that problem. And then all of a sudden, I discovered I didn't have no problem. Mm-hmm. Because they were working on the real problem while I'm out here beating the bushes, thinking that I'm working on the problem. I wasn't doing nothing but swinging at shadows. Or swinging at my own shadow and didn't know it. And so, see, in other words, Neely Fuller got no argument with other black people about what we should be working on. Just work on what you think should be worked on. Because no one has solved what I call the race problem yet. And many other people say there is a race problem. Nobody has solved that. So we can't even prove that we're trying. Those who say that we're trying. We don't have no proof that we're trying. Why? Because it's still here. So you prove that you're really trying when it ain't here no more. That's according to what? Here again, according to Neely Fuller and his code. What some people call his code, but I say it's nothing but a code of logic. Neely Fuller don't have a code. I really don't have a code. It's not Neely Fuller's code, because everything that I'm doing and saying should be based on what? The logic that the Creator put into the universe. That's what.
All right. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We thank you for listening to the CRCS. And if you would have a question or comment in the last hour here, or half hour of the program, please dial this number, ma'am or sir, 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button as RT has, and just wait. Oh, yeah, I can wait. Just wait until your time comes up, and then we'll have Mr. Fuller answer your question. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. And then I will respond by saying I got it, and it will go in rotation to be read at a specific time, and I will inform you of that. You can also join the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and then you want to click on where it says programs and the Produce Justice Show. Do that, and when you do that, then the chat room comes up, and you push that button, and you can get in there and get in the chat. Yes. Just make sure that you stay codified in there. We all should stay codified whether we're in the chat room or not. Because trust me, to have a program like this, and not because I'm on it, but to have a program where you're able to express yourself and talk about whatever is on your mind, VGQ, all that, you can do that here. So thank you for listening. Let's get on with these last few moments of the program. Oh, yeah, books. Yeah, I'll have Mr. Fuller get on that in a few years. But right now, okay, RT, Mr. Studious Man, get ready. It says Missouri. Looks like you move around, but here we go. Ready, set, and you have the buffer. There you go. Got the go button. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead this morning.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fuller, this is more of a comment. I was riding around in the city that I'm in, and I was looking at all the businesses and all the help wanted signs on the businesses, Walmart, McDonald's, and then I thought to myself, Mr. Fuller, there's only really one business on the planet that's in control of all the other businesses, and that's the system of white supremacy. And then I thought, if you are black on this planet, you either directly or indirectly work for the system of white supremacy. Your comment?
That's true. I say that all the time. That's what white supremacy means. The last word is always going to be somebody white. Always. Now, you might have to call through a whole bunch of other things to get to that person, but when you find it talking to the real person behind everything, like in any criminal organization, like in the movie The Godfather, what did Don Corleone say in the back of the car, talking to Tom Hagen? Tom Hagen says, well, we're going to make sure that everybody that we got in doing certain things are going to have clean records. And the Don said, Barzini will know that without being told. And so then Tom Hagen said, his lawyer, said, you mean Tatalia, don't you? He says, Tatalia, he's a pimp. See, but I never knew until today it was Barzini all the time. In other words, the person who, like on the cover of the book, The Godfather, on some covers, it had puppet strings. That's how the system of white supremacy works. And they can make anybody a puppet. In fact, everybody who is non-white on the planet, according to the evidence that I have seen and heard, the puppeteer, the controller, is the Barzini of the criminal organization called the System of White Supremacy. But they have a lot of people out front, meaning all of the non-white people of the planet. We come to meetings and all like that. Most of the time, the key white supremacists who make most of the decisions at that meeting are not even at the meeting. But they tell the people who are at the meeting what to do and what to say, what to not do and what to not say.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's all black people there, that is for sure. If there's anything to it at all that's important, if there's anything that's going to have an effect, all those black people are sitting at that meeting, and every last one of them, directly or indirectly, is under the control of the white supremacists, who are not even in the building. And the white people there, or black people there, can say, oh, this is our thing. We make the decisions. Sure, you make a lot of decisions sitting there talking to each other. But when it comes to the action part, it better be approved of by somebody white, even if that somebody white is 10,000 miles away. Now, that's what white supremacy means.
Mm-hmm.
Not in some instances, but in every instance where something is going to happen that the white supremacists either approve of or disapprove of, somewhere on the planet. And if the white supremacists disapprove of it, it doesn't make any difference what black person is there, talking about whatever it is. The white supremacists say it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. The white supremacists say it is going to happen, it's going to happen. That's what white supremacy means.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep having to explain that to people, this program, but that's what the program is about. I'm not resenting that. I'm recognizing that. Now, what I'm recognizing is either true or false, and that's the only thing that a black person has to find out. And you can't find it out from me because I just said it. So they can say, I'm not paying attention to Neely Fuller. I'm going to find out if what he's saying is true. Or I have found out that what he's saying, every bit of it is a lie. It's false. So if you think that, then you can tell other people. And then you can tell them what is the truth. Because that's the thing that I would want to know. That's the thing that I recommend that you tell the other people, and not only tell them, but be sure you told me.
Yes,
because people, a lot of people begin to call in more and more, and I invite that. Because if Neely Fuller's out here making that kind of mistake, that white supremacy does exist, the first person who needs to be corrected is Neely Fuller. But you're going to have to, no, you don't have to do nothing. But I request that you show me what is real, who is really running things on this planet, and who my enemies really are, and what, if you can go further, I sure want this more than anything, what I can do about it.
What you can do about it, absolutely.
And I'm willing to do my max to dump everything that I've said and get on that correct track that'll take me right where I need to go. But I have to have some evidence of it does work.
Yes, sir.
Because right now I don't see anything that is working against the system of white supremacy to the effect that it's being replaced with justice.
All right.
I don't see any evidence of that. And naturally, for those who say white supremacy doesn't exist, it's not supposed to be any evidence because it doesn't exist.
Okay.
But something exists, I guess.
All righty. Let's go to Gmail. This is from Black Speak. It says this, Fuller, on an earlier show, you asked a question, do white people need black people more than black people? Do white people need black people more than black people need white people? Please, Mr. Fuller, explain why this question is so important.
I don't know. But I do know that the white supremacists have concluded that in order to have white supremacy, you have to have somebody to be supreme over on the basis of color. And they have done that. So now, whether or not they need to do it, see that word need, words are very important. I don't think so. I think they can have a system of justice. They, meaning really, they meaning everybody who is on board with the system of justice. But you can't have white supremacy and have justice on the same planet at the same time. So it's a system. It's not even personal. This is where, according to logic, black people make an error when they think it's all about feelings. White supremacy is a business. The business of doing what? Producing what everybody wants. But they have a way of mistreating people, the white supremacists that is, in order to get what they want. And they do that through a system called white supremacy, which is mistreating people on the basis of color. But you can theoretically have the same effect through the system of justice without dominating and mistreating people. You can get the same products. And what are those products? Fun, glory, and material comfort. These are products that every creature wants. But the white supremacists have decided that they will get those products based on what color a person is, what color their skin is. And that's the three things that all creatures, the smallest ant and the largest dinosaur, all creatures want three things: fun, glory, and material comfort. The white supremacists have chosen to get it by dominating and mistreat people based on color. When you can get the same thing through a system of justice, but only theoretically, meaning the system of white supremacy has proven itself. It does work. The system of justice has not proven itself.
Okay.
Why? Because people are still being mistreated.
People are still being mistreated.
People are still not getting the most constructive things that they should have.
Okay. Let's go to Nicole of Maryland by way of Missouri. Nicole, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good
first
morning.
of all, I think I have more of a, I've just now know, I don't know the acronym, but the VGQ.
Okay.
So here I go. It's kind of, I was trying to get in last week and I was having issues, so I'm using my white Indian neighbor's phone, and today's my grandpa's birthday, so I'm glad I'm here.
Hey,
anyway,
Grandpa, happy birthday. All right.
And happy birthday, great to Nate. And then Black Farmers of America, to answer your question last week when you were saying about pharmaceuticals and stuff, this was kind of the idea I had last night. Black Farmers of America was the natural ingredient to pharmaceuticals that now prey on big bank again. Baby boomers, can you yield already to the next generation, not the X generation? And then baby boomers was big on status quo, as our ancestors was backbone against. They was more about affirmative action, which brings me to my statement now. I'm a kind of theoretical, so I kind of be all over the place sometimes, so bear with me, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. Baby boomers used the bus to maintain the gap as blue-collar workers. It was in the civil rights fact. Now we right back to affirmative action of equal resources to fight against outsourced jobs in the workforce. Reparation is needed to a degree to help with that. And then lastly, when Google Fiber first came to Kansas City, we as the neighborhoods associations were saying, can you offer that at least for a year to keep those communities that was in low-income areas caught up with technology? And then, which leads me to another quote of myself. When COVID, and I learned this from Dr. Wilson about the definitions of word, because niggas backwards is sagging and God backwards is dog, which now I'm changing it into genius of domain. When COVID hit, everybody had to use the Internet, which forced then people to have free Internet services. And lastly, Mr. Fuller, as a generation next, not X, how do we continue, I guess I'm doing it from answering my own questions, again, bear with me. How do we then, do we file petitions? Because in that constitutional book, it says that a farmer refuted, which my grandpa was a farmer, so I'm proud of that. A farmer refuted, and that we can overthrow government if it's fell into, and don't quote me because I'm not quoting it correctly, if it's fell into show equal justice, how the British colonies came to America in the first place because they wanted religion freedom. So can we in this era organize and petition for a lot of the bylaws to change? Because I recently found that it's a disability act that's even in the way that our kids or our youth are questioned in our neighborhoods when they're being interrogated.
According to the code, first of all, you just keep all of that real simple. You want to know at the beginning of each day what the wants are. So all problems are solved through one process, questions and answers. So at any meetings or whatever you want to call them, organizations, whomever you talk to, you interact with people, you go straight to page 171, 172 of the 2016 edition of the textbook. And you got questions there dealing with what? Wants or want, W-A-N-T. It applies all the time. anywhere, anytime, without making it all complicated and chopping it up into this and that kind of committee and all these fancy labels. You can sweep all that aside and just say, we are at this meeting, even if it's a meeting without a name. One thing we're sure of, everybody in this meeting wants something. So that's the first thing you do is get the answers to what everybody wants. Okay? So we're here, we say we're here because we want to solve a problem. You know, does everybody say, you know, approve of that? Everybody, amen, whatever terms you want to use, whatnot. So here we go. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive results to be? Now, just like you're calling in, the lady who's calling, just like she said, all these different things that can become, I have found from experience, at least with me, that everything becomes very confusing. And then when you got confusion, you start getting arguments. But what eliminates arguments, those 4 questions. What do you want to do? Who, you know, and you have to take into consideration everybody who is there. What do they want? Everybody wants something. You cannot interact with people unless you find out, first of all, what they want. Because people will do whatever it takes to get what they want, as a rule, as long as their situation doesn't get worse as a result of their wants. And they know that it's getting worse. So what do you want to do? Or you can phrase it in another way. What do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? Now, that's where it gets real thick, when you get to the planning part. Because a lot of people who want solutions to problems don't want to plan for them or don't know how. And that's usually the case. We don't know how. We don't even know where to start. And then that 4th question, that's the real bottom line question. What do you expect the constructive result to be as a result of what you want and result of your plan in getting what you want? What do you expect the constructive result to be? Because you shouldn't be wanting to do anything that's not going to produce a constructive result. So hopefully, in answer to everything that you were saying, just those 4 questions will take everybody, that's a guarantee, right where they should be. It won't take everybody where they want to be. That's a want. But it'll take everybody right where they should be. Should be in order to do what? In order to produce the most constructive result. Because whatever move you make, whatever you say to anybody, is supposed to produce a constructive result.
A constructive result, yes.
Never
absolutely.
A non-constructive result, ever.
Mm-hmm. All righty. All right, thank you, Nicole. Let's do this. All right, here. This is from a brother in the concept called French Guyana, I think it is. Anyway, Mitro, he says this. Mr. Bobby, can you ask Mr. Fuller this question? What is his thoughts concerning a non-white person who my screen just went dark. A non-white person who decides to make a strike of hunger in order to be heard by the white supremacists? Thank you.
Make a strike, a hunger strike?
Yeah, hunger strike, yes.
I'm just saying they're doing what they're doing. That's what the code requires me to say, those exact words. See, nothing has worked in bringing peace to the world so far. Nothing has worked. Lots of people have talked about what will work, but nothing has worked when it comes to a world of peace, which you got to have justice in order to get peace. Otherwise, you're not going to have peace. Not no peace on earth, on the planet, period. Without justice, which means guaranteeing nobody's mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. So now if a person says, I'm going on a hunger strike, that's what you want to do. Getting back to those wants again. Why do you want it to do that? Go on that hunger strike, because it's going according to my plan. Well, what is your plan? To go on the hunger strike. And what's going to be the constructive result? Well, I don't know until I do it. And that's how everybody will find out.
Okay. All righty. Well, there you go, Mitro. All right, well, we've come to that point where we have the last caller before Mr. Fuller talked about his book. So no more calls this week. Get ready, Denise in Houston. Get ready. You're our new caller, so don't be scared now. Don't be scared. I'm going to cue you in here. You ready? Get ready. Let me see here. All right, Denise, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby. How are you?
Good morning.
Still learning.
It's an honor and a privilege to speak with both of you. I've listened to your show for several years. I finally decided to call in, and I'm familiar with Dr. Fuller through Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And I appreciate him constantly reminding us that we are living as prisoners of war in a white supremacist system. My question is, as a former educator, I noticed that our young people are really being neglected, melanated children in the United States. And I want to know I have a concern about them for the future. So what is it that you think that is some of the most important things that we can impart in our children in terms of knowledge to give them a sense of self-esteem and identification to live in this supremacist world? What should we be educating and telling them?
Understanding white supremacy.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Understanding white supremacy. And the textbook for victims of white supremacy will help them to do that, and any other textbook that will help them to do that. But if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. That's one of the first statements in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. In the new edition, I put it on a separate page altogether. It takes up that whole page, just that one statement in big letters. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. That's a guarantee. If you don't understand. So the prescription is you got to understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works. Or you're going to come out of that school, I don't care what kind of school it is, being confused about how the world is run, this world that you're looking at, while you're in that school and all around you while you're not in the school, because actually, according to compensatory logic, counter-racist logic, in order to understand your problems that you were trying to get rid of, because that's why you go to school. Going to school means you're trying to solve problems, trying to get rid of problems. That's the whole purpose for going to school. If you don't know how to get rid of problems in the best possible manner, in the most constructive manner, and you have been to school, then you that school did not even teach you the basics. If you're not a problem solver, school is about problem solving. Somebody hands you a problem, you say, "This is a piece of cake. I can solve it." So we're always in school. That's another thing. That's one of the first things we need to learn. And the main reason, the only reason is for solving problems in the most constructive manner. That's what school is. We kind of want to put school in something off to the side of the road or in the middle of the road or, up in the sky or something, this thing called education. There's no such thing as an educated person until you know everything that you need to know or ever will need to know. Then you're educated. You are not educated not 1 second before then. When you know everything that you ever will need to know in order to do what? 2 words. Solve problems. If you're walking around with any kind of problem that you can't solve, you're not educated. See, that's a new way of looking at things. Talking about what to tell young people, that's what you tell all people. There's no such thing, which is why I say every week I'm still learning. It's what you're supposed to be doing. You're in the universe. We are not universal people, though, because we're not in tune with the laws of the universe. All of us, white, non-white, male, female, old people, young people, they say, well, that's a smart person over there, that's a wise person. According to the code, one of the first things you learn is that there's no such thing as a wise person. A wise person is a person that knows everything about everything and understands everything about everything. In order to do what? In order to produce the most constructive results. Nobody has proven that they know that much and understand that much. That's why I guess we call it universe, and some builders we call it universities. But we need to be universal people, meaning anywhere you go. We're talking about going to school. You're already in school from the minute you're born. You're in the universe, and you're in a university, because there's no university bigger than the universe, other than all the universes put together. That's what you call higher education.
Yes.
So how high is high? Nobody's ever answered that question, at least to the satisfaction of logical people, not even mathematicians.
Mm-hmm.
How high is high?
How high
Does anybody know that answer?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, maybe we'll table that to next week, but I'll tell you, and we'll do this, though. Everybody, stay codified. Stay codified. Mr. Fuller, we're getting ready to wrap this baby up. So you got to talk about your book before we say bye for this week.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And in answer to the last caller's questions, yeah, you can have those students take a look at Neely Fuller's book and then all the other books that will help do what? Help to understand white supremacy and understand all other problems along with that. You can get my book by going to producejustice.com. You can get all 3 volumes in about a week or 2. I would say August the 15th should do it.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers.
Producejustice.com.
Be codified and go to producejustice.com for all the latest information. We'll see you next week, and guess what? We'll try to do better. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank all the callers and all of the participants.